Coca-Cola produces tons of pure cocaine every year at secret factory in New Jersey. Until 1903, an average bottle of the legendary soda pop contained nearly 9 milligrams of cocaine. To this day, the Coca-Cola company imports coca leaves, which are used to produce cocaine in the United States. A small chemical plant, tucked away in a quiet hamlet of New Jersey, has an exclusive license to import coca leaves into the United States on behalf of the Coca-Cola company, according to media reports. The leaves are used to produce a decocainized ingredient for the iconic soda, and the cocaine byproduct is sold to the nation's largest opioid manufacturer, which sells the powder as a painkiller and topical anesthetic to dentists. The modest Maywood plant has been processing coca leaves for Coca-Cola for more than 100 years, and is now run by a chemical manufacturer called Stepan. It is the only business permitted to import coca leaves and produce cocaine in the United States and operates under special license granted by the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. It is unknown how much the company imports. In the 80s it was reported that more than 500 tons of leaves could enter the plant in a single year. 500 tons of leaves produce about 2,000 kilograms, 4,400 pounds of cocaine, which, according to an internet list of pharmaceutical companies, could be worth at least $2 billion. Ukraine tags senior Orthodox bishop with ankle monitor. The authorities have ordered the abbot of the Kiev Petrovsk Lavra to stay away from the historic monastery. A senior cleric in Ukraine's most prominent Orthodox monastery, Metropolitan Pavel, has been placed under house arrest and barred from attending services for 2 months, amid an ongoing religious crackdown and attempts to evict hundreds of monks from the Kiev Petrovsk Lavra. At a pretrial detention hearing on Saturday, Metropolitan Pavel, secular name Peter Lebed, who is accused of harboring pro-Russian sentiment, was ordered to stay in a village 50 kilometers from the capital. The hearing was initially postponed after the 61-year-old cleric, who has served as abbot of the monastery since 1994, reported feeling unwell. However, he was brought to court again in the evening, and officially placed under house arrest for 60 days. The authorities have placed a tracking device on his ankle, videos from the courtroom show. The judge denied Pavel's plea to remain confined inside the monastery, but also refused the prosecutor's request to ban him from sharing videos online. The Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, accused Metropolitan Pavel of inciting religious hatred and justifying Russia's actions in Ukraine. The cleric has denied the allegations, insisting that he has always condemned Moscow's military operation and stood in defense of my motherland. Ukraine has long experienced religious tensions, with several entities claiming to be the true Orthodox Church. The two main rivals are the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, UOC, and the Kiev-backed Orthodox Church of Ukraine, OCU, which is considered by the Russian Orthodox Church to be schismatic. Kiev officials have intensified their crackdown on the UOC, even though it proclaimed independence from Moscow after the start of the conflict in February 2022. The Ukrainian Ministry of Culture denied the UOC a renewal of tenancy in the 908-year-old Kiev Petrovsk Lavra, Monastery of the Caves, effectively kicking out to the streets the 220 monks living there, as Pavel described it. The eviction deadline came this week, but the authorities have yet to forcefully seize the monastery, amid ongoing rival protests outside. In January 2023, the government evicted the UOC from the Dormition Cathedral and the refectory church adjacent to the Lavra, and immediately gave permission to the OCU to hold a Christmas service there. Moscow has repeatedly condemned President Vladimir Zelensky's crackdown as persecution of Orthodox Christianity. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova remarked on Saturday that April Fool's Day was held with great fanfare in Kiev, sharing a video of a crowd of protesters dancing around a woman who was praying on her knees in the middle of the street. Orthodoxy is being abused, mocked, and sneered at before our eyes, she said. The civilized remain silent. That's not the occasion for which they wrote their human rights declarations and reports on religious freedom. Syria suffers third night of Israeli strikes. The latest air raid reportedly targeted the central Homs province, following strikes on Damascus. Syria's air defenses have been activated in response to a wave of Israeli aggression for the third time in 4 days, the Syrian Arab news agency, SANA, reported on Sunday. The attack came from Lebanese airspace at around 12:35 a.m. local time, targeting the city of Homs and its surroundings, an unnamed military official told SANA. The military source confirmed some material damages and at least 5 injuries among soldiers, after air defenses failed to intercept some of the missiles. The latest air raid came after 2 nights of strikes on the Syrian capital and its suburbs. The first barrage of missiles hit Damascus early Thursday, shortly after midnight local time. The Syrian military accused the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, of conducting the attack, which came from the direction of the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights and injured at least 2 soldiers, in addition to causing some material damage. Another wave of missiles targeted a location in the Damascus countryside the next night at around 12:17 a.m. local time, but resulted in no casualties, according to the Syrian military. However, Iran later confirmed that a military instructor from its Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, was killed in the Friday strike, promising that Israel's criminal act will not go unanswered. The IDF has not commented on any of the attacks, in line with its long-standing policy of not discussing operations conducted outside of the country. However, Israeli warplanes have repeatedly bombed targets inside Syria over the past decade, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once acknowledging that there have been hundreds of strikes. On the occasions that the IDF comments on the attacks, they claim to be hitting Iranian and Hezbollah targets in preemptive self-defense operations against Tehran's growing influence in Syria. Damascus has repeatedly protested the raids as a violation of Syrian sovereignty, to no avail. Iran swats away U.S. spy plane off territorial waters. Well over 2 years into the Biden administration, the hoped-for-drop in tensions between Tehran and Washington has failed to materialize, with the U.S. ramping up sanctions, practicing mock bombing runs against the Islamic Republic with Israel, and continuing the illegal occupation of wide swathes of Syria, a key Iranian ally. Iran's military shooed away a U.S. Navy EP-3E reconnaissance aircraft on Sunday after it entered airspace over the Islamic Republic's territorial waters. After the U.S. Navy's EP-3E aircraft entered Iran's territorial waters, vigilant Navy commanders sent a warning to prevent the aircraft from entering the country's airspace without authorization, the Iranian Navy said in a statement. The Navy's Public Relations Department indicated that the alertness of its forces blocked the unauthorized entry of the terrorist plane into Iran's airspace, with the U.S. aircraft said to have heeded the warning and returned to international waters. The Pentagon has yet to comment on the incident. Sunday's incident isn't the first of its kind, with Iran's military regularly picking up EP-3E spy planes skimming provocatively close to Iranian waters in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman to maximize intelligence collection. The Islamic Republic has not shied away from making clear to Washington that it will target American aircraft straying into its airspace. In June 2019, Revolutionary Guard's air defense troops shot down a U.S. RQ-4 Global Hawk drone in the Strait of Hormuz using a cutting-edge domestically made surface-to-air missile system, bringing the 2 countries to the brink of war. Iran later revealed that its forces had refrained from firing on a manned Boeing P-8 Poseidon with dozens of airmen on board, which was operating near the Global Hawk to prevent a further escalation. Iran then collected the wreckage of the U.S. drone, put it back together and put it on display in Tehran. Iran's military has warned that it will not tolerate U.S. aircraft, whether they be manned or unmanned spy-craft of nuclear-capable bombers, from intruding on its airspace. In 2020, a senior Iranian air defense commander warned that the country's airspace was one of Iran's red lines, and that, as enemies have experienced in the past, the smallest violation will be met with the air defense forces' crushing and fiery response. Iran has one of the most capable air defense networks in the Middle East, with a dense system of ground and sea-based SAM missiles complemented by sophisticated detection capabilities, including 3D phased array radars, large early warning radars with ranges of between 400 and 800 kilometers, and an active space surveillance program. Influx of Ukraine's cheap grain to Europe fuels anger, erodes support for Kiev regime. The Istanbul grain deal was arranged by the UN and Turkey between Russia and Ukraine in July 2022 to ease exports of grain and fertilizer from Black Sea ports amid the ongoing hostilities. It has since been extended twice, with Moscow warning that most vessels do not reach the world's poorest countries and end up in Europe. Eastern member states of the European Union are beginning to question continued support for Ukraine as they cope with a glut of grain that has been triggering anger among their communities, according to U.S. media reports. Europe was supposed to be a transit territory for Ukraine's cheap grain, originally meant for poor countries in Africa, but the huge influx of duty-free imports is staying on the continent and hitting local farmers in Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and Bulgaria. Ukraine is also reportedly increasingly using several routes for crop export besides the Black Sea, such as by rail, road, and river. In Romania, one of the European bloc's largest corn and wheat producers, and one of the countries which originally was eager to facilitate more than half of Ukraine's grain exports by land, imports rose to 570,000 tons last year, having previously hovered close to zero. According to Razvan Filipescu, Vice President of the Association of Farmer Producers in the Dobrogea region, as cited by the media. The country's farmers recently protested in Brussels, in front of the European Commission building, demanding compensation for their losses. In Bulgaria, where almost 80% of the sunflower crop for last year is still unsold, along with more than 3 million tons of 2022 wheat, angry farmers blocked border crossings with neighboring Romania for several days. It's not working, the grain is staying right here, Emil Macho, chairman of the Slovak Agriculture and Food Chamber, was cited as saying in reference to the Istanbul grain deal. Reports have indicated that Slovakia has been urging the EU to collaborate with the UN's World Food Programme to guarantee that Ukrainian grain travels through the bloc to other destinations. With prices plummeting and storage facilities overflowing, the rage of farmers witnessing their harvests being overlooked in favor of Ukraine's cheap grain may trigger political consequences for many of the nations involved. For example, in light of looming elections in Poland and Slovakia, authorities are starting to wonder how their decisions may translate into votes. Thus, in Slovakia, former Prime Minister Robert Fico's Smeresti, Direction Social Democracy, party, which has called for ending military aid to neighboring Ukraine, has already grabbed the lead in an opinion poll ahead of elections in September. Poland, a country zealously funneling aid to the Kiev regime amid the ongoing US-driven proxy war against Russia, is now forced to contend with the fact that supplies of Ukraine's grain are threatening local livelihoods. We must help Ukraine in the transport and sale of grain to countries outside the EU. But this cannot be done at the expense of Polish farmers and local markets, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki was cited as saying in a social media post. According to him, the European Commission ought to set a limit on how much Ukrainian grain enters the European Union. Recently, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Romania and Slovakia penned a letter to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, calling on the bloc to consider restricting imports from Ukraine. Everything that European countries have done to toe the line set by Washington and its allies regarding the Ukraine crisis, be it sanctions on Russia over its special military operation in that country, or sending military aid to Kiev, has subsequently backfired. Funding the Ukraine war machine against Russia has resulted in an energy crisis, austerity in Europe that set off waves of strikes and protests sweeping the continent. Furthermore, the EU's own stockpiles of weapons have been hollowed out. As for the Black Sea Grain Initiative, European countries receive much more Ukrainian grain than African nations or other countries in need of grain, Andrei Suzdaltsev, political scientist and associate professor at the House Department of International Relations earlier told Sputnik. He added that the West sells Ukrainian grain to poorer countries at higher prices and benefiting from it. Thus, during the first 6 months of the deal, it turned out that only 3% of Ukrainian grain went to countries where there is a shortage of food, whereas the rest of the grain was exported to Europe. Furthermore, Russia stated on March 18 that it would extend it only for 60 days because of the lack of progress in the issue of the supply of Russian food and fertilizers. Moscow noted that Russian shipping companies and banks continue to face sanctions and barriers introduced by Washington, Brussels, and London that supposedly do not apply to Russian food and fertilizers. Moscow, Blinken has called Lavrov to discuss WSJ reporter's arrest. The two diplomats had a brief conversation last month, after Blinken requested a meeting with Lavrov on the sidelines of the G20 summit in New Delhi. At the time, they discussed Ukraine and strategic stability, focusing on the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, New START. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Foreign Ministry announced on Sunday. The ministry has stated that the top diplomats discussed the detention of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who was arrested in Russia earlier this week on espionage charges. During the phone call, Lavrov told Blinken that the WSJ journalist attempted to gather information classified as a state secret. As Blinken called for Gershkovich to be immediately released, the Russian foreign minister stressed the need to respect the decisions made by the Russian authorities, adding that the reporter's fate will be decided by court. On March 30th, WSJ reporter Evan Gershkovich was detained by Russia's Federal Security Service in Ekaterinburg while trying to obtain classified information for the U.S., with a Moscow court ordering him to be detained for 2 months on espionage charges. According to the FSB, Gershkovich, acting on the instructions of the American side, collected information constituting a state secret about the activities of one of the enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has repeatedly stated that Moscow will provide consular access to the arrested journalist in accordance with internal procedures. Following the arrest of Gershkovich, the WSJ has called on the U.S. authorities to consider retaliatory measures, such as the expulsion of the Russian ambassador and all Russian journalists working in the United States. For his part, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that all journalists who have valid accreditation in Russia can and will continue their journalistic activities in the country, noting that they do not face any restrictions. As Russia creates new radar-absorbing material, who are the world leaders in stealth tech? Experiments in the use of special radar-absorbing materials and aerodynamic designs to provide combat aircraft with stealth characteristics go back to the Second World War. How are such aircraft defined? What are their advantages and drawbacks? And who is leading the charge in the development of next-gen stealth? Sputnik explores. Engineers from a subsidiary of Russia's Russelectronics have created a new generation of stealth materials which the company says can absorb up to 95% of the electromagnetic radiation generated by radars. The fundamentally new material is said to be capable of absorbing radio waves across a wide frequency range, and to consist of a fiberglass/metal core mixture that's thin and lightweight enough to be used aboard aircraft components. The issue of creating a structural radar-absorbing material has long been a problem in the modern military aircraft industry. Existing aircraft stealth coatings need to be regularly restored, while fiberglass provides a reduced reflection coefficient which does not require maintenance. Our prototypes have already successfully passed required factory tests, Central Design Bureau of Special Radio Materials Director Alexei Dymovsky said in a press statement. The company has been tasked with creating the stealth technology for engine compressor blades, typically one of the components most easily picked up by radar. Russelectronics promises the new radar-absorbing materials will significantly complicate the detection of an aerial object using radar equipment, thus improving the stealth characteristics of aircraft that use them. What is stealth and why is it necessary? Aircraft designers use a variety of design tricks and technologies to reduce the likelihood of aerial vehicles being picked up by enemy radar systems. This includes creating aircraft with aerodynamic properties which reduce drag and visibility, known as radar signature or radar cross-section, to radar signals, and a variety of radar-absorbing coatings, radiation-absorbent materials, or RAMs. Other stealthy designs focus on reducing the area of the aircraft that can be picked up by radar, including components to shield compressor blades and engines, for example, or the use of a special fuel to reduce thermal radiation. Stealth technologies have become a vital feature of many modern combat aircraft, as well as some drone and cruise missile designs, amid dramatic advances in detection, search, and targeting radar technologies, as well as long-range surface-to-air missile designs. In the second half of the 20th century, in their modern iteration during the Cold War, stealth technologies were envisioned by military planners as a futuristic tool to enter enemy airspace, carry out attacks on sensitive, strategic targets, and escape, hopefully without detection or interception by enemy defenses. However, the combat experience of U.S. stealth aircraft in the 1990s showed that even against non-peer adversaries, stealth is not the end-all be-all miracle weapon it was cracked up to be. More on that below. When was stealth first created? The first stealthy aircraft go back to the Second World War, with Nazi Germany's jet-powered flying wing designs such as the experimental Hortenho 229 fighter/bomber, being perhaps the most famous example. German designers used experimental charcoal dust coatings on the airframe, and the aircraft itself featured a much sleeker radar cross-section than its traditional, bulky twin-turboprop engine cousins of the time. The USSR and Britain also experimented with stealth technology, albeit in less glamorous fashion, before World War II broke out. These designs included the Soviet Polikarov Po-2 multi-role biplane, built almost entirely of fabric and wood, and the Yakovlev Air-4 invisible aircraft, a prototype of a plane built from cutting-edge synthetic polymers, aluminum powder paint, and lacquer work which allowed the plane to disappear from view in testing. Britain's de Havilland Mosquito light bomber was made mostly of wood, allowing it to evade early radar, and is arguably the most successful wartime proto-stealth design alongside the Po-2. Who developed the first true modern-day stealth aircraft? The advent of jet power and the increasing sophistication of radar and missile technology made the appearance of stealth fighter and bomber technology as we know it today a matter of time. With the British Avro Vulcan strategic bomber and the Lockheed State Route 71 Blackbird strategic reconnaissance aircraft, created in the mid-1950s and mid-1960s, respectively, becoming the first aircraft with modern-day stealth elements produced in large numbers. The State Route 71 was used to effect during the Vietnam War, becoming the only American plane never to be shot down by North Vietnam's air defenses. The aircraft was also used for spying operations against the Soviet Union in the Kola Peninsula and the Baltic Sea, and the Far East. During the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, Blackbirds provided the Israelis with timely intelligence about concentrations of Egyptian, Syrian, and Jordanian forces. The Blackbird was formally retired in the late 1990s, with enthusiasts citing political reasons and high operating costs, but the writing on the wall for the aircraft may have become clear following the fielding of the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-25. A Soviet supersonic interceptor whose speed and altitude characteristics made it possible to intercept the State Route 71. The US and the USSR continued to experiment with stealth technology in the 1970s and early 1980s, with Rockwell rolling out the B-1 Lancer supersonic variable sweep-wing heavy bomber in the mid-1970s, and Lockheed building the HAV Blue proof of concept stealth demonstrator in 1977. The Soviets followed up with the MiG-29 fighter, which included stealth features such as a radar-absorbing coatings and a frontal RCS of below 1 square meter. In the early 1980s, Tupolev created the Tu-160 White Swan variable sweep-wing heavy strategic bomber, which continues to hold records as one of the fastest and heaviest bombers ever created. While it was not designed specifically as a radar-invisible bomber, the Tu-160 features special radar-absorbing coatings, and, combined with its top speed of Mach 2.05, is designed to pop in and out of a combat zone and drop its ordnance before the adversary has a chance to respond. In the mid-1980s, Lockheed began production of the F-117 Nighthawk, a contemporary flying wing design developed as light stealth attack aircraft, featuring an RCS of just 0.001 square meters. During the late 1980s, Northrop created its own flying wing stealth plane, the B-2 Spirit bomber designed for bombing missions deep inside enemy territory. These two planes are touted as the first true stealth aircraft, where the technology is an integral, foundational part of the design, rather than a complementary add-on. Modern stealth aircraft, and planes which incorporate stealth technologies, include the F-22 Raptor fighter, the Sukhoi Su-34 fighter bomber, the MiG-35 and Su-35 fighters, the Eurofighter Typhoon, the HAL Tejas fighter, the Shenyang J-31 fighter, Sukhoi Su-57 fighter, and the F-35 Lightning II multi-role aircraft. What are the vulnerabilities of stealth aircraft? While they do have improved capability to operate in hostile aerial environments without detection compared to their non-stealth cousins, stealth aircraft are not invisible, and can be vulnerable to even legacy radar and missile systems, particularly when operating in a dense air defense environment, and if air defense troops display a high level of skill. In 1999, Yugoslav air defenses shot down a stealthy F-117 Nighthawk and hit another, with the first plane downed using the S-125 Neva, a Soviet air defense system first fielded in the early 1960s. Modern effective countermeasures to stealth aircraft include passive, multi-static, radar with improved RCS detection, infrared search and track systems, VHF radar, and over-the-horizon radar. Along with the US and some of its NATO allies, Russia, China, and Iran all boast the possession of modern radar and missile systems capable of detecting, tracking and if necessary downing enemy stealth aircraft. These include the Podsanuka, Sunflower, a coastal over-the-horizon surface wave radar system which can detect even the latest US stealth equipment, the F-35, at long range. Bombshell report debunks ICC warrant for Putin, and mainstream media sidesteps it. There's radio silence from legacy media as a new expose completely undermines the allegation by the ICC that Russia is running a network of camps that are holding children as hostages and committing a war crime by illegally deporting Ukrainian children. A stunning new report has debunked the narrative that camps in Russia for children from the Donbass constitute crimes against humanity, completely undermining the allegations that serve as the basis for the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin. In late March, the Prosecutor General for the ICC claimed that President Putin had personally committed a war crime, citing what it insisted was the unlawful deportation and unlawful transfer of children from the regions of the Donbass that the Kiev regime claims as its own. The ICC prosecutor appeared to have based his arrest warrant on research produced by Yale University's Humanitarian Research Lab, HRL, a State Department-funded entity whose executive director, Nathaniel Raymond, recently claimed on CNN that thousands of children are in a hostage situation. Per the Gray Zone, an independent American investigative outlet, State Department spokesman Ned Price seized on that report, which his employer funded, to condemn what he called Russia's system of forced relocation, re-education, and adoption of Ukraine's children, an allegation which was later echoed by the ICC. But according to the Yale lab, Gray Zone journalist Jeremy Lofredo explained in a new video report, the outrageous allegations of war crimes on the part of the Russian president were based on simple Google searches. Involved zero interviews with actual victims. And the researchers didn't even attempt to see any of the camps in person. Now the Gray Zone has unveiled never-before-seen footage, captured by Jeremy Lofredo in Russia last year, showing the alleged re-education camps, and they're nothing like what the State Department claims. Although the Yale researchers and the International Criminal Court are probably under the impression that no Western journalist has been to these so-called re-education camps, Lofredo explains in a new video report, that assumption would be wrong. Indeed, the journalist says, I visited one of these camps 4 months ago, unaware that it would be so important to future war propaganda. Rather than a re-education camp, Lofredo explains with his co-author, Gray Zone editor Max Blumenthal, he found a hotel full of happy campers receiving free classical music lessons in their native Russian language from first-class instructors. Lavrov interviewed one of the camp's instructors, violin teacher Peter Lundstrom, who said that many of the 80 children from the Donetsk and Lugansk region who came to the music camp had first-hand experience with the war that's been raging in the backyard for over 9 years. Some of them lost their relatives and friends, he notes. In the conflict zone, they cannot continue their professional music studies. In a subsequent interview with the Grey Zone, HRL's executive director admitted the camps were actually less Third Reich and more teddy bear. In other words, the lead author of the report used to justify an ICC arrest warrant for the Russian president seemed to acknowledge that the kids aren't being stolen, but are merely being given respite from the trauma of life in a conflict zone. Detailing his findings in comments given to Sputnik News, Blumenthal says their report completely demolishes the entire case against the Russian president and exposes it as a public relations stunt that is driven by a hyper-politicized ICC prosecutor captured by the U.S. and a State Department-funded report. Between Lofredo's trip to one of the camps in question, the original text of the report at the center of the allegations, and the Grey Zone's interview with the director of the group which authored it, Blumenthal says the 3 layers of journalistic inquiry totally debunk the allegation by the ICC that Russia is running a network of camps that are holding children as hostages and committing a war crime by illegally deporting Ukrainian children. But despite the groundbreaking nature of their findings, Blumenthal says not a single mainstream media has reached out to him in the 24 hours since publishing the report. Western media is doing all it can to ignore this devastating debunking of the Yale HRL report that inspired the ICC arrest warrant, he noted. But this shouldn't as a surprise, the award-winning journalist says. Because mainstream's outlets are seeking to prevent the populations of countries whose governments are sponsoring this proxy war from learning the truth, which is that this is a politicized warrant driven by a bogus investigation that relied on no field research, whose own report debunks itself. Ironically, concludes Blumenthal, it's clear the ICC warrant and the U.S. government-sponsored report it's based on were both designed to obstruct diplomacy with the Russian government in order to prolong the war, and therefore to increase the level of human rights abuses that have been taking place. Like Gestapo, Nigerian on U.S. Customs, United Airlines agents, who allegedly Harsass Africans. The U.S. Currency and Foreign Transactions Reporting Act obliges anyone entering or leaving America with cash to report currencies and monetary instruments whose value exceeds $10,000. According to a Nigerian scholar, the U.S. security agents harass Africans in pursuance of the act. African passengers flying to or from the U.S. have experienced harassment from U.S. Customs and United Airlines agents, a Nigerian-born scholar, who allegedly recently witnessed the harassment, told the media. He called Customs' treatment of Nigerian travelers demeaning and completely unacceptable, adding that airport security agents wait for passengers on purpose so that they can single someone out and harass him or her. The main issue is that the security agents will wait until you are ready to board the plane, and like the Gestapo, they will come with their dogs and gloves, singling people out by psychology or looks. They pull them aside with their sniffing dogs, the witness said. According to the Currency and Foreign Transactions Reporting Act, the U.S. requires anyone entering or leaving the country with cash to report currencies and monetary instruments whose value is more than $10,000. You have money in your pocket, but you are not given a declaration form, and you are cleared to travel. This has been going on for years, and people take it for granted. We all know that you can have more than $10,000, but you have to declare it, stated the scholar. He said that providing a currency declaration form is the responsibility of the airline, the Immigration Service and Customs. According to him, the airline offers a form on its counters, but in this case, United Airlines did not give Africans the opportunity to declare their currency. According to the scholar, it is United Airlines which is responsible for providing its passengers with the declaration form, and the airline is to blame for how customers are treated. We are Nigerian Americans that are coming home to our families in Nigeria. Why are we being singled out for harassment on United Airlines? I travel with American Airlines and others. I don't face this harassment. They always have the forms waiting for you. So, United Airlines is culpable because it has a duty to provide the declaration forms to its customers, he outlined. The Nigerian has described how badly some United Airlines passengers were treated. In my own case, the plane was delayed for some of those passengers to return. They treated them like garbage, going to the customs office, getting searched, abusing them, checking their luggage, digging through stuff, and they used insulting language, the man emphasized. According to him, U.S. security agents only allow such behavior against African people. Where in the world do you see sniffer dogs rummaging travelers for currency? Their verbiage is abusive, shouting, and telling us to shut up. What? They can't do that to any other person but Africans, he stated. Italian government proposes fine of up to 100,000 euros for use of English words. Fratelli d'Italia, which is known for its nationalist stance and anti-immigration policies, has been pushing for measures to protect the Italian language. The party argues that the increasing use of foreign words is diluting the identity of Italy and undermining its cultural heritage. The Italian government is considering imposing fines of up to 100,000 euros for the use of English words in daily conversations and official documents. The proposal has been put forward by a legislator from the governing Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy, party in an effort to protect the Italian identity. The draft stipulates that individuals and companies caught using English words in official statements and documents would face hefty fines. The move is aimed at preserving the Italian language, with the government providing citizens with a list of approved Italian alternatives to replace English words. It remains to be seen how effective the new bill will be, given that English words have been widely used in the Italian language for decades. This initiative follows an example set by France, since the French Academy, the official body supervising matters related to the French language, has also been promoting linguistic purity. In May 2022, France introduced a new law that bans the use of English language gaming and tech jargon in official communications, advertisements, and public documents. The law aims to preserve the purity of the French language by limiting the use of foreign words and promoting the use of French alternatives. Scientists have found newly formed blazar galaxy that emits radiation in our direction. Blazars are a subset of active galaxies that feature a supermassive black hole at their center radiating powerful jets of particles into space, directly on the observer. They are among the most powerful emissions in the universe, and their intense radiation is believed to be produced by these relativistic jets of particles. A team of astronomers has discovered an unusual transformation of a galaxy from previously having been a radio galaxy to now becoming a blazar, a type of active galaxy with a supermassive black hole at its center that emits intense radiation. The transformation of the galaxy, named PBCJ 2333.9-2343, was observed using the Very Long Baseline Array, VLBA, the San Pedro Martyr Telescope, and the XMM Newton observatories. The telescopes in 2009 and 2015 captured the galaxy emitting radiation like a blazar, while it was previously thought that it was a giant radio galaxy, a type that emits just into the plane of the sky. Recent study suggests it has turned almost by 90 degrees in Earth's direction. It is rare for such significant changes to take place in a human lifetime. Despite blazars ejecting immense amounts of particles, it's completely safe for people on Earth, as jet lobes of PBCJ 2333.9-2343 span across 3.9 million light-years, which is considered far. However, our Milky Way travels through deep space at a distance of over 650 million light-years from the recently reclassified blazar. The fact that we see the nucleus is not feeding the lobes anymore means that they are very old. They are the relics of past activity, whereas the structures located closer to the nucleus represent younger and active jets, Dr. Lorena Hernandez Garcia, leading researcher, said. The transformation of PBCJ 2333.9-2343 could also provide important insights into the behavior of supermassive black holes and the evolution of active galaxies, as it is the first example of a non-X-shaped radio galaxy changing its jet direction. The discovery of PBCJ 2333.9-2343 highlights the importance of continued research on active galaxies and the complex processes that govern the behavior of supermassive black holes and their surrounding environments. China launches first liquid-fueled commercial rocket Tianlong-2. The rocket took off at 4:48 p.m. BJT, carrying a satellite into preset orbit. The purpose of the flight was to verify the overall plan of the rocket and systematic coordination, as well as obtain the flight environment parameters of the launch vehicle. The satellite will be used for technology verification of remote sensing experiments. Developed by Chinese commercial rocket company Space Pioneer, the rocket is 35 meters long with a takeoff mass of 150 tons. The medium-sized rocket is a three-stage launch vehicle propelled by kerosene and liquid oxygen. The rocket type can cater to China's demand for low-cost, high reliability, quick response, and large-scale launches of small satellites in constellations. The mission is the first flight for the Tianlong-2 carrier rocket. China verifies in-orbit thermoelectric new energy supply technology. China's Shenzhou 15 mission crew on board the China Space Station, CSS, has completed testing of a free-piston Stirling thermoelectric converter, marking the country's first successful in-orbit verification of such technology. The Stirling thermoelectric converter is a key technology for spacecraft new energy supply, which features simple structure, high efficiency, lightweight, fast startup, small vibration and low noise. It can efficiently convert thermal energy into electric energy, so as to reduce a spacecraft's dependence on solar energy. The technology has broad application prospects for future manned lunar and deep space exploration missions. Successful in-orbit test. The Stirling power converters, developed by the Lanzhou Institute of Physics at China Academy of Space Technology, are installed in the equipment cabinet for basic tests in the Mengtian lab module of the CSS. Before the test, 3 in-orbit experiments were carried out in the lab module. During the test, the device ran stably throughout the whole process and produced better than expected performance indicators, with its thermoelectric conversion efficiency reaching an advanced international level under the same isothermal ratio. Launched in October 2022, the Mengtian lab module is used for studying microgravity and carrying out experiments in fluid physics, materials science, combustion science, and fundamental physics. It has completed more than 50 tasks as planned so far. The Shenzhou 15 mission crew conducted the third extravehicular activity on Thursday and returned back to the CSS, according to China Manned Space Agency. Chinese, Japanese FMS call for enhancing dialogue, cooperation. Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Qin Gang on Sunday met with Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi, who is on a 2-day visit to China. The two foreign ministers agreed to strengthen dialogue and communication, and advance practical cooperation. In the face of the current world intertwined with turmoil and change, there are both opportunities and challenges in China-Japan relations, Qin said. Noting that 2022 marks the 50th anniversary of the normalization of China-Japan diplomatic relations, Qin said the meeting between the leaders of the two countries in Bangkok last year charted the course for bilateral relations. This year marks the 45th anniversary of the signing of the China-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Qin noted, calling on both sides to review the spirit of the treaty, strengthen exchanges and communication, and push forward the bilateral relations. Peaceful coexistence and friendly cooperation are the only right choice for China-Japan relations, Qin said. He said Asia is the most dynamic and promising region in the world today, adding that maintaining regional peace and promoting common development are the general aspirations shared by all countries. Facing disputes and conflict, forming cliques, and exerting pressure won't help solve the problems, Qin said. It will only deepen each other's estrangement. The 4 China-Japan political documents has laid the political and legal foundation for the relationship between the two countries, Qin said, adding that keeping promises and taking history as a mirror are important prerequisites for the stable and long-term development of bilateral relations. Qin expressed his hope that the Japanese side will establish the correct understanding toward China, bring out political wisdom and responsibility and work with China to strengthen dialogue and communication, advance practical cooperation, as well as people-to-people and cultural exchanges. He also called for properly managing differences to remove obstacles and reduce the burden for bilateral relations, aimed at building China-Japan relations that meet the requirements of the new era. The discharge of Fukushima nuclear-contaminated wastewater into the sea is a major issue concerning human health and safety, Qin said, urging the Japanese side to deal with it responsibly. The U.S. used bullying to suppress the Japanese semiconductor industry, and now it is repeating its old tricks against China, Qin noted, adding that the blockade will only further stimulate China's determination to be self-reliant. As a member of the Group of Seven, G7, and Asia, Japan should do more things that are conducive to regional peace and stability, and build a genuine consensus in the international community, said Qin. Qin reiterated that the Taiwan question is at the heart of China's core interests and concerns the political foundation of China-Japan relations. China urges Japan to abide by the principles and promises of the four China-Japan political documents, not to meddle in the Taiwan question or damage China's sovereignty in any form. For his part, Hayashi said Japan-China relations have tremendous development potential. Noting that this year marks the 45th anniversary of the signing of the Japan-China Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Hayashi said the Japanese side is willing to work with China to implement the important consensus reached by the two leaders of both sides and abide by the four Japan-China political documents. Japan stands ready to strengthen communication and practical cooperation at all levels with China, properly manage each other's concerns, aim to promote the building of constructive and stable Japan-China relations, and jointly make positive contributions to regional and global prosperity and stability as responsible countries, he added. Regarding the case of a Japanese citizen suspected of engaging in espionage activities in China, Qin said China will deal with it according to the law. China provides certainty for world economy. The theme of the Boao Forum for Asia Annual Conference 2023, An Uncertain World, Solidarity and Cooperation for Development Amid Challenges, is of great value and significance. This theme is informative and covers many topics of global concern. It addresses the uncertainty of the future development of the world as well as the unity, cooperation, openness, and inclusiveness among countries. It calls for a joint response to meet challenges and promote development. The purpose of this discussion is to achieve certain expectations and results. There is no doubt that global growth today faces uncertainties. Recently, the World Bank released a report titled Falling Long-Term Growth Prospects, Trends, Expectations, and Policies, which pointed out that the potential GDP growth rate between 2022 and 2030 will average 2.2% annually for the world and 4% for developing countries. About one-third lower than in the first decade of this century. This year, the Russia and Ukraine conflict lasted for 1 year and has not yet ended. The economic and financial sanctions imposed on Russia by the United States and Europe continue and are even aggravated. The energy supply chain is reshaped in Europe, and the United States is clamping down on Chinese technology companies. Trade tariffs, the industrial chain and supply chain of multinational companies are readjusted, and geopolitical turbulence brings uncertain prospects to the world economy. Because this is a geopolitical conflict between major powers, economic and trade friction and the strategic layout is facing changes. The impact is huge and far-reaching, and it will bring a crisis if not handled properly. Against the backdrop of many uncertainties in world economic development, international institutions are optimistic about China's economic prospects. Since the end of last year, international organizations have raised their forecasts for China's economic growth. The Chinese government has set a growth target of 5% in 2023, which is relatively high among major economies and gives reassurance to world economic growth. At present, China's economy is facing the task of continuing to promote urbanization and modernization. The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China held in October 2022 outlined future development goals and prospects for China's development in the 14th Five-Year Plan in 2035. It explicitly stated that China's economic strength, scientific and technological strength and comprehensive national strength would greatly increase in 2035, with per capita GDP reaching the level of moderately developed countries. This means that there is still plenty of room for economic growth in the future. High-quality development is the primary goal of China's modernization. The Chinese economy is moving towards innovative and green development, undergoing transformation and upgrading, and has great potential to increase the product's added value and improve quality, which is beneficial for sustainable economic growth. In terms of the domestic market, China has a population of 1.4 billion. Compared with the per capita income of medium-sized developed countries, China has huge potential for growth. The median income requires a per capita monthly income of $1,000 to $2,500. China's per capita income is far from this standard, and the potential for development is great. Therefore, the important task for the future is to increase people's income, expand consumption, and promote economic growth to a new level. This is also the direction of the country's economic growth driven by consumer demand. In terms of import demand, China's imports will reach $2.72 trillion in 2022. With the large expansion of China's economic growth and its absolute scale, the future of import demand will increase. It is expected to remain at this level every year in the next 5 years, and even continue to expand, which is conducive to promoting the development of international trade and the stability of international economic growth. In terms of outbound investment, China's industry-wide outbound direct investment in 2022 reached $146.5 billion, increasing by 5.2%, and non-financial direct investment reached $116.8 billion, making it the largest outbound investment among developing countries and contributing significantly to global direct investment and economic growth. In the next 5 years, China's outbound direct investment will reach more than $140 billion every year, which will contribute to the stability of the world economy. In summary, the stable and sustainable growth of China's domestic economy, its growing import demand and outbound investment, as well as its relatively sound and supportive industrial system, will provide the world with affordable products and applicable technologies, and provide certainty for world economic development prospects. Swiss prosecutor opens probe into Credit Suisse takeover, FT. Switzerland's federal prosecutor has opened an investigation into the state-backed takeover of Credit Suisse by UBS Group, the Financial Times reported on Sunday. The Bern-based prosecutor is looking into potential breaches of Swiss criminal law by government officials, regulators, and executives at the two banks, which agreed on an emergency merger last month, the report said, citing the authority. Last month, UBS acquired rival Credit Suisse in a deal worth 3 billion Swiss francs, $3.3 billion.